Once again, go on to daily participation and click resubmit in the text box. Will open up and type in 3 significant items. So today we'll just talk about the PA court system in particular. Mentioned a little bit of it yesterday. The court system in Pennsylvania involves, first of all, one of the most significant figures, the district attorney. They're elected at each of the counties. They'll have offices in the county seats. So for Crawford County, Meadville, for instance, Venango would be Franklin, Warren County would be Warren. And there, the district attorneys have a staff, and they hire other attorneys, of course, to assist them because, depending upon their caseload, they're not going to be able to do all the work themselves. And they're elected for 4-year terms. They run as a part of a political party. And they're in charge of basically deciding which cases to take to court and which not to take to court. And it's incredibly complex because there are lots of different laws. If you completed unit number 5, you saw there's an activity where you pick different types of crimes that people could be charged with. And a lot of it involves kind of a gamble. You have to sometimes put a more severe punishment possibility on someone to try to get them to confess. And some people think that's unethical. Some people think it scares people into confessing crimes they didn't commit. And obviously, the public expects some types of results or you won't get reelected. So some people think that gives unnecessary pressure on district attorneys to get convictions when maybe they really aren't there. And they can decide to actually take something to trial, or if they can have enough leverage over the suspect, they can, of course, get them to settle. And that means they don't have to go to trial. They just reach an agreement between the two attorneys that this person will confess to their crime and have a certain amount of punishment, less than if they went to trial. That's kind of the sweetener for the deal. And these kind of tactics, of course, do get better results. And if they settle out of court, it costs a lot less money because obviously trials cost time. And at the same time, once again, there are these criticisms that it ends up putting people in jail because of political games instead of if they're actually guilty or not. Then there's also a couple other positions that are elected besides the judges, and that would be the jury commissioner. They are obviously in charge of collecting the pools of juries. Remember, there are 2 different types of juries. The grand juries in felonies or serious crimes decide if someone should be indicted or charged with a crime. So they are before the trial happens. And there's the actual trial jury. 12 people that in a unanimous fashion in Pennsylvania will decide whether or not someone is guilty or not guilty. Guilty, of course, beyond a reasonable doubt. So they collect these pools of people. Now, I keep seeing this going around social media about, because this involves illegal immigrants and stuff like that, but people keep posting that somebody posted a list of jury potential personnel, and they pointed out that there's a large amount of illegal immigrants, and that's because they get it from the voting records that proves legal immigrants are voting. But they actually get jury selection from anywhere. They can get them from voter registrations, driver's licenses. They can go through the phone book and pull people's names. If they don't have enough people, they can tell the bailiff to go down to the local mall and sequester people at random. And if you don't cooperate, you could go to jail. So they can actually pull people for juries from everywhere. So a lot of people say, well, if I don't register to vote, I'll never get selected for a jury. No, that's not true. Then there's the clerk of courts. They're the person that processes all the paperwork and makes sure the courts are running smoothly. They work with the senior judge in the county to make sure that this is happening. It's also an elected position at the county level, just like jury commissioner. Then there's the magistrates. They are the lowest level judges. They're also called district judges. And all these judges, by the way, in Pennsylvania are elected for 10-year terms. And this would include people like Amy Nickel or Andy Fish, who's over in Franklin. And they are in charge of minor crimes, misdemeanors, citations, arraignments for suspects when they are officially charged and placed under arrest, and they have to decide if they're a danger or not. They're a flight risk. They could leave jurisdiction. They perform what we call our bench trial, so it's just them as the judge. There's no jury there for any of these. And they are in most small towns, sizable small towns throughout Pennsylvania. Pleasantville used to have one, for instance. They shifted that over to Franklin because the western Pennsylvania population is declining. Then there's the Court of Common Pleas. These exist in each of the county seats. And this is where the trials like you would see on Law and Order would take place. Those obviously occur in New York, but if they're in Pennsylvania, they'd be in the Court of Common Pleas. These judges are also elected for 10-year terms. They originally run with a party, for instance. And they act as a referee during the trials. I mentioned this yesterday. Pretty much all the stereotypical things that you see judges do in movies and TV shows. They can take all kinds of cases. Criminal cases, which obviously involves people breaking the law. Civil cases, which involve lawsuits. Family court cases involving divorce, custody, alimony payments, adoption of children, contesting wills. They can receive all these types of cases. And so one of the complaints, believe it or not, from a lot of the judges at the Court of Common Pleas is there's not enough of them. They have too many cases to take care of, and there's often a backlog. Then, like I mentioned yesterday, if you don't agree with the fairness or constitutionality of the ruling at the Court of Common Pleas, you can appeal to the Superior Court in criminal cases. And then in government-related cases, you go to a separate court. This was to help streamline and make the cases move through more swiftly. But government-related cases can go to the Commonwealth Courts. So those are two different appeals courts. And they hold office in Harrisburg, and then they switch back and forth throughout the year. They also have a courtroom in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia to try to make sure that people are a little bit more fairly treated when it comes to the distance they have to travel to go to the appeals trial. And then, lastly, there's the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And that involves 7 justices, also elected for 10-year terms. And by the way, these ones at the top level, after their first term is over, they have what it called is a retention vote. So you go to the ballot and it says, should this person stay in office or not? And you can vote yes or no. So that helps remove the politics a little bit from it. So that way they aren't just being kept on the bench because their party had more popularity or something like that. It should be based on merit and whether or not people think the person should be recalled. Hardly anyone ever gets recalled, by the way, through a retention vote, unless they do something really wrong, misspending money, negligible of their duties, not reporting, for instance. Those kind of things will get them recalled, but other than that, not so much. And then the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, so involving state issues, that's typically the end. If there's some kind of connection to the federal Constitution, it can be appealed to the United States Supreme Court, but that's unusual, and usually the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is the last place that will hear your case. Does anybody have any questions about that?